Thank you, Chair. Secretary of State, you repeatedly promised, and indeed in a meeting of our committee in July 2018, you stated that by the end of 2018 there will be a consultation on the details of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And indeed, as the Ministerial Journal reported, that hasn't transpired as yet, but one senior officer who was directly involved in regular meetings with government officials said that their response to the questions about the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, that was supposed to be happening shortly, but, and I quote in his words, that was worse than useless. The officer added that the government has mishandled the arrangements for exit from the EU in a spectacular fashion. We're on the brink of leaving the EU, and yet the councils have no idea what they're really planning for. What's gone wrong?
Well, we obviously have been continuing to work up the UK Shared Prosperity Fund to be this new simplified fund operating across the UK, replacing the existing EU funds. There has been discussion that has continued on the design of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund over the past year. We've had 25 engagement events across the UK with over 500 people representing a breadth of different sectors. And so, whilst, yes, I would want to see the consultation starting at the earliest opportunity, the work has continued to structure, to listen, and we remain committed to consulting widely on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It is also worth underlining the issues that are there over things like the Treasury guarantee over the structural funds too, and the technical notices that we have published in relation to that as well. And so I don't agree with the statement, and perhaps it wouldn't surprise you that I say that in terms of the characterisation of this. We have provided those technical notices. We have provided that clarification in relation to the European Regional Development Fund and others as well, in terms of looking towards our departure from the EU. But clearly, I recognise the call for us to engage properly over the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and that's what we will do.
So you've stated at the earliest opportunity. When exactly will that be? So when will the consultation be?
Well, there are two elements. Obviously, the quantum of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund would be something that would be settled through the spending review itself, and that obviously is obviously the chance to reference that during the spring statement in terms of the sort of summer period. But before that, we want to effectively consult on some of the structures and purposive nature of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, building obviously on the previous statement that I made on the written ministerial statement on the fund, and so that's the approach that we want to do. Clearly, at this stage, all of the focus for many people has understandably been on preparations for immediate departure and the immediacy around the current frame, which is why we want to get on with the consultation, but nonetheless, it's where that might draw attention away from the current here and now elements, which obviously, understandably, are the focus for so many people.
So just to clarify, we don't know when the consultation will be, we don't know how much the fund will be, and we don't know when and how it will be administered. Is that correct?
Well, we've already set out some of the through my written ministerial statement on how we intend to invest on the foundations of the industrial strategy, ideas, people, infrastructure, business environment and place. We've obviously indicated that we see the role of the local enterprise partnerships being key to this, so giving that sense of how the base structure would exist. But I know that there is much further detail in relation to it. Clearly, I can't give assurances in relation to funding, because inevitably that depends on the funding envelope, which is why Treasury are very clear that that is something that would be needed to be settled through the spending review. But my point is that the purposive nature on this, on the simplified fund, to tackle inequalities between communities by raising productivity, especially in those parts of the country where economies are furthest behind. That is the purposive element behind all of this, and why we have been continuing with the work and consulting through the different events that I've spoken about to develop that further.
Okay, well, let's go on to another government promise. the government guaranteed that local authorities will obtain the funding promised to them from various EU sources for the funding period ending in 2020.
Yep.
And local authorities have told us that they would usually currently be preparing for the bids to the EU for the period from 2021 by now. So are you confident that there is enough time to establish the UK Shared Prosperity Fund? And do we have any other options?
Well, as I've already indicated, we have the guarantee that the Treasury have provided. You know, we can talk about, I'm sure we may come on to the European Investment Bank as well as some of the existing European programmes. Obviously, we have said that we will continue to participate in EU programmes financed by the Multi-Annual Financial Framework through to 2020 until they end, including ERDF and ETC. Obviously, in the case of a no deal, we have extended the guarantee, first issued in 2016 and covering projects contracted before we leave the EU, to cover the full 2014-2020 funds allocation in the event of a no-deal scenario. And so I think when you look at the technical notices, the ERDF notice that we published, I think that does, and also for ETC as well, you know, it does give that sense of further clarity as to the nature of the guarantee and indeed how things are intended to operate. And obviously those technical notices are on record and have been published.
Okay. You touched upon the European Investment Bank. Now, the current withdrawal agreement, assuming that is the withdrawal agreement which is passed by Parliament, that proposes that the UK should leave the European Investment Bank upon withdrawal from the EU. Why did you take that decision? Because surely the European Investment Bank is a great asset to us in terms of how we conduct our business. And are there plans to create a similar UK-based structure?
Well, obviously there are those macro decisions that have been taken, and as you rightly point out, under the withdrawal agreement, the UK will secure the return of its around 3.5 billion euros capital in the EIB, and obviously we then have the opportunity to shape our own arrangements. The Infrastructure Finance Review, which was announced at Budget 2018, and the government has then published a consultation spring statement, and this process in terms of how we will deal with things, yes, is ongoing, and that's sort of the process that we've already set in train around this. But I think it's also worth bearing in mind as well that under Section 4 of the Withdrawal Act, the EIB Group's operating rights are preserved, and therefore, just to clarify in relation to existing UK project contracts, they should be protected and organisations do not need to take any action. So, in other words, you know, I suppose there's arrangements that sit there, but equally what the future may hold when we are able to, in essence, get our capital back and being able to reinvest that.
Okay, so there are plans for that similar UK-based structure on that.
As I say, that sort of was started under the finance review, and so that will now conclude when we get to the spending review. So it's precisely these issues that are being examined.
Okay, thank you.